Hey, welcome to Trial by Father. I'm Isaac, and as a brand new dad, I've got more questions than I have answers for. So, I'm sitting across the table from other parents who are further along the journey than I am, hoping to learn from their wisdom. I want to explore what it looks like to raise children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And my hope is that it'll spark meaningful conversations around your own table so that we can all learn what it looks like to be the parents God has called us to be. In this episode, I got to sit down with Hart Traylor and talk all about parenting during the elementary school years. Hart and his wife Vanessa are members of our church, and they have three boys ranging from elementary up to high school. In this conversation, I got to talk to Hart about what it looks like to make the transition as a family where your kids start going to school. I got to ask him questions about the type of schooling that they've chosen for their boys and why they've made those decisions and how that affects them as a family and their normal rhythms. This conversation was helpful for me, and I hope it's helpful for you. With that, let's dive in. Well, thanks, Hart, for
Yeah.
coming in and sitting down to have this conversation. Why don't you get us started off by giving the 30-second intro of who you are?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. So my name is Hart Traylor. I have been married to Vanessa for, I guess, will be 17 years this December.
Awesome.
We have three boys, Kai, who is just turned 15, Judah is 11, and Joel will be 5 in a few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a nice spread.
Oh, yeah.
Lots
It
of
is,
fun.
Yeah. We,
Um,
Joel was a surprise, but it was a good one. We'd kind of reached that point where, the two olders were independent, and it was
Yeah.
fun. And then we got the surprise, and it's been
And
a
third
lot
one?
of joy. And
Jump back into it
That's
again.
right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Well, I wanted to talk specifically with you, talking about the age ranges of your kids. You got a kid in high school, you got a kid in middle school, and one that's in elementary school. Really wanted to talk to you about the elementary school years themselves. So you've had a
Okay.
couple boys that work their way through it, one that's already in the middle of it. And so it's, I guess in terms of development stage-wise, there's not a clear marker. It's just something easy that culturally, you're going to hit first grade and you're going to start elementary school. And it is different for the household, at least from my perspective.
Right.
In terms of it's no longer just a free-form child. There's a bit more structure in the days in terms of a purpose for you're going to go learn a thing. So what I'd love to hear from you first is what I feel like one thing I know that Lydia and I have already had conversations. We're a little ways away from having to make a decision, but we've already had conversations on type of school. What are we going to do?
Right.
And I'm sure lots of other parents are in that same boat. And so maybe talk to us about the schooling choices that y'all have made for your boys, how that's worked, what were the reasons you did, all up in that zone.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So currently, our two oldest, they go to school. They go to a private Christian school.
Okay.
This is their third year doing that. It's a new school this year, but third year of just being in that setting. Prior to that, we homeschooled.
Okay.
So we homeschooled Kai all the way through sixth grade, and Judah would have been, I guess that was third grade. How did we get there? I don't know. I think there was an element of preference, at least on my end. I grew up around families that homeschooled, and I'm a kid of the '90s, so it was still weird back then. But I knew a lot of families that did it and did it well. And as I'm getting older, my friends are going off to college, to the honors colleges, and getting these full rides. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. You're making those notes. And then after Vanessa and I got married, the churches we were a part of, there were families that were doing that, and
Gotcha.
it seemed like they were doing it well. So I always had a good experience and view of it, and I think that was kind of something I leaned more in favor of. Vanessa didn't necessarily have that background, so she kind of had more of the questions of, are they going to be weird? And the socialization, all those questions that people throw around.
Absolutely. Good questions.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, of course. And like I said, after we got married, we were a part of some churches where she started to get to see families can do this well. And, they are raising intelligent kids and so I think she was able to start seeing that. So something I leaned towards, it wasn't a hill I was going to die on though.
Sure.
But it was kind of a preference I had. But I think also the Lord just worked through circumstances and just where we were at life in those moments. So when Kai would have been reaching, I guess, elementary age, like kindergarten, 5K, we're starting to have those conversations. When Judah was born, he was actually born with a rare blood disorder. And so his body couldn't create the neutrophils, which is the white blood cells that you fight off infections with. So anytime he's exposed to the slightest germ, a common cold, for his body, it would just, blow up and it
Wow.
would get really bad. So we'd have to go to the hospital and be in the hospital for a few days. So as we're starting to think about, well, what are we going to do school-wise for Kai? He's currently, we were doing just your typical preschool,
Yeah.
a couple days a week for a few hours, and he's coming home with snotty nose, and then
Sure.
we're going to the hospital for 3 days. We're kind of going, oh, I don't really want to send my kid to 5 days to a school
Sure.
where, so we're having those conversations. So that was kind of impacting it. And then with the blood disorder, we were told, hey, there's a chance that statistically he may develop cancer from this. And so as we were going into that 5K year for Kai, Judah did in fact develop 2 forms of leukemia.
Wow.
And we were told we're going to have to do a bone marrow transplant. And so here in South Carolina, the only place you can do a pediatric bone marrow transplant is down in Charleston at MUSC. So we basically moved our family to Charleston for about 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
I was commuting back and forth during the week, but Vanessa was down there with the kids the whole time. And so we were kind of like, all right, well, Lord, you directed us to what we're supposed to do this year, and that's going to be homeschool because there's no other option really. And so did that year, and through that, like we already were kind of had some connections with different people homeschooling, so we were familiar with there's some good co-ops and homeschool co-ops here in the city that we were familiar with. And in that time, we ended up getting connected with one specifically that they were wonderful people, and they really just kind of provided us with a lot of resources. And we did it on our own, but they just helped supply us with a lot of what we needed that year.
Sure.
And then it went pretty smoothly, and we were like, this isn't too bad, and we can do this. And thankfully, because of our work, we at that time I was a pastor at our church plant, and both of us were doing real estate together. So we had flexibility where it was one of those where we could tag team with the homeschooling. And so we like, let's keep doing this. So in the next year, we actually enrolled Kai in that the homeschool co-op Excelsior, and he started going 2 days a week, and we were doing that, and we really loved it. And I mean, there's things about homeschool that we loved as far as, really just the flexibility where, like I was the kid and growing up, especially in high school, Vanessa and I are both public school kids. So, and we had good experiences, but I was the kid that struggled to maintain a B average, but it was because I didn't want to do all the busy work. So they'd give me all this homework, and I didn't do it because I was like, I know the topic, I know how to do this, so I'm not going to do it.
Sure.
Then I got to college and realized, this paper I have to write is going to be a huge part of my grade. I take that seriously.
Yeah.
And I did really well in college. And so I loved that with homeschooling because it was like, I'm not going to bog them down with all the busy work, know, and or just we could be done by noon, 1 o'clock, and then they have the rest of the day to go play and be kids and all that. So we loved it. We were really getting into it. And eventually Judah, we got him doing that as well. And so, like I said, we did that up through 6th grade. So 6-7 years of doing that. And by 6th grade, it was getting hard because now you're getting into some of the subjects that are getting out of our expertise. You know? Neither one of us are math people, so it was, and our oldest was not a math person, and just a lot of tears and butting heads, so that was getting difficult. And then also at that point in time for us, we our church plant had closed by that point, and that ended up having was really hard on our marriage. I didn't lead well. We didn't walk really well through that, and so that 6th grade year was just really rough because it's hard, just the what he's studying, like I said, with the math, all that's becoming difficult. And then you have this other layer of we're having, honestly, moments of almost crisis of faith and stuff like that because it was just church hurt and that kind of stuff. So it was just a hard year. So then going into that summer before what would have been 7th grade, Vanessa we were planning to do homeschooling again, and she was working on getting all the supplies and the curriculum and all that stuff, figuring out what we needed. And she kind of just had a little meltdown, panic attack. Like, I don't think I can do this. I'm going to go to the grocery store. Like, I just can't think about this right now. And so while she was gone, something that the Lord had been teaching me in that season was I need to do a better job of listening to my wife. And, and one thing we had heard was over the years was people will say, you have those moments where you need to be talked down from the edge of the cliff. It's just when you homeschool, you have those moments where you're I don't think I can do this anymore. And a lot of times when my wife would express those moments, in my head, I'm like, well, she's just on the edge of the cliff, but I'll talk her down. And we'll be fine. But I'm trying to listen to her. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe this isn't healthy for us right now to have this additional. It's a good thing, but maybe having this on our plate isn't good. Like maybe we need to free that up so we can focus on our marriage and focus on that. And so she went to the grocery store. I reached out to, there was a school like 2 minutes from our house. And so I'd already been connected before with the headmaster through some church stuff. So I reached out to her, just said, hey, I know school starts in like 3 weeks. Is there any chance that you have any openings? And also by that point, our church plant had closed. So financially, we were living fully off of our real estate, and the market had was coming down from the height of what it had been. So we're feeling it in our pockets. I'm like, and is there any scholarships? Is there anything you can help with? And within like an hour, I mean, they'd made room for us. They basically offered us a buy one, get one deal, essentially. And then it was really neat because even just through a family member who ended up pitching in a little bit to help with it as well. Like we were paying exactly what we would have paid to do homeschooling that year, the co-op and all that. So it just felt like the Lord's affirming this. And so, yeah, we made that switch. And it was weird because, for 7 years we've been homeschooling and had a lot of flexibility and freedoms. And, hey, this opportunity arises where let's go on this trip and we'll just take the school supplies with us.
Sure.
All of a sudden you're not getting to do that. So there were a lot of, learning curve and growing pains with that. But we also saw our boys really thrive in that environment too, of getting to have people who are a little better at these subjects and kind of being able to pour into them and give them the attention that, we weren't able to with, like it was funny because at the end of Kai's 7th grade year, he loved his math teacher. He's like, I love math. It's he really enjoyed it. And so I was like, well, that's what happens when you have a teacher who's good at it and enjoys it. So, so we made that switch and that's what we've been doing ever since. So, but I mean, I think preferences certainly shaped it. Like 15 years ago, as we're starting to think about, well, what are we going to do for school? And I remember listening to the podcast and reading all the articles and stuff that are out there. And you're kind of hearing these rumblings of like, oh, schools are kind of getting wacky and doing some stuff. And, and didn't necessarily have the language that we have it on now. Where like you have the whole, like the woke language and stuff like that. But that stuff's starting to pop up. But then you're like, but we're in the South and like very, I don't think we'll see that here. And then it's like, you see that start to infiltrate. So that certainly does. Like for us, it impacted us, but not to the point that, it scared us or I don't think we made decisions based on fear, but it's also, is it worth it? And where we've always lived, the schools that we were zoned for never had great, grades and all that. So it's kind of like, well, is it worth it to send them into that environment? We're going to have to detox them when they get home and they're getting the okay education. Like, I don't know if the trade-off for us made sense. But yeah, preferences, stuff like that certainly shaped it. And then just like I said, circumstances, your kid has a health condition. It's like, well, we're going to homeschool or we have to go through a transplant.
Absolutely.
Homeschooling makes the most sense. Or, we need to focus on our marriage right now. And let's pass the baton to someone else and we'll still take our responsibility of discipling and leading them. We'll take that seriously, but it's okay to bring other people along and help with that too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The kind of some of the things that are standing out to me in terms of what you're talking about, and as you're thinking through the decisions and making it, is the level of obviously y'all have got the whole piece, like you said, on the health side that maybe most families aren't having to deal with.
Right.
But there's also a level of, when you were saying there, we can send them off to public school, but then when they come back, we're going to have to like almost rework some stuff, and they're only going to be getting okay education or whatever. Like you're trying to think through that stuff, trying to be intentional about what your kid's going to get. And then you're also trying, what it sounds like y'all are thinking about is how can we still be parents in the way in which they're being schooled? So rather than, and that's one of the things that's been sitting inside of my head, which is like, I don't know the history of the education system, the way it comes about to where it is now. But for lots of cultures and lots of families, the development of your kid just continued to stay in the home. And the idea that your kids would get up and go out and somebody else would be helping and genuinely is a help. Like I'm not making an argument one way or the other. I'm just saying like it's something that's worth considering. It sounds like y'all were doing that too. Yeah. That's kind of the zone where we're in. Like I said, we're way in the early stages of it, but just trying to think through, you are still the parent and you still are trying to be intentional. Maybe you don't teach math very well, but
right.
All the values that you care about as a family, you still have to work toward.
Yep.
And so that sounds super cool. What were, for y'all, it might look different than some people who, I would say that homeschool is a minority. I think public school is probably the majority, and then private school probably sits somewhere in between that. so most people, what y'all were experiencing when y'all ended up deciding to have Kai and have Judah go off to a private school, which is in essence a public setting in which other people are teaching them.
Yeah.
What were some of you talked about some of the rhythms that changed with that stuff. What would you say were some of the big changes that y'all are having to shift through? Some of the rhythms of the house that we're having to change in terms of day to day or week to week or whatever, that I think probably just everybody feels when their child is introduced into that new life of being off with somebody else for the whole big chunk of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one, it was just making that adjustment of just you kind of take your time when you get up in the morning and,
Sure.
You're starting school when everyone's awake and feeling good and ready to start the day. But you're still finishing by noon or 1 o'clock. And so then you have a lot of time to just relax and hang out or knock out your chores and, do that
Sure.
type of stuff versus all of a sudden you're having to get up, get dressed, make sure breakfast, everyone's ready and out the door by whatever time and getting them to school before it's, the tardy bell rings. And,
Sure.
then if we're late and I have to walk them inside,
Sure. Yeah.
and then they get home and they're exhausted because they haven't been doing this routine. And now they're, their bodies are trying to acclimate to this new rhythm. And,
Sure. Yeah.
And now it's, okay, well, we still have our chores, but it's instead of it being 1 when we're finishing, now they're getting home at 3:30 and we've still got our chores to do and you've got homework we got to do.
Yeah.
And they want to have downtime and, and we got to fit dinner in, it's all of a sudden it's
Sure.
like, well, we have a lot less window to get that stuff done. And so that definitely took time to find a rhythm for that because, there was a lot of early on, just some bickering about, trying to,
Sure, yeah.
hey, we got to get these chores done. And well, I feel like I've earned time to have some screen time. It's like, I understand. I'd like to have screen time too. You start having those common,
Sure. Yeah. What were the ways that y'all navigated that in terms of they have things that they have to do. So the one that is definitely only they can do is homework. Like only they're the ones that can do it. And then, it sounds like y'all have some kind of system set up for y'all got responsibility around the house. You're going to take care of some stuff. So what were the systems that y'all at least up to this point have been working well for you in terms of this helps give them an on-ramp to success to get their stuff done while still also maintaining some avenues for fun inside of our family?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this was really collaborative because my personality would be like, come home, do your chores, get your homework done, and then you can have some rewards. Whereas Vanessa's more, well, they've been at school all day. They need a little time to, just relax for a minute.
Sure.
And so kind of finding that balance of, all right, they're home, y'all get a snack, just chill for a minute. And then here's your list of stuff you got to do. And then as a reward, like, you can have that screen time or you can whatever later, but these things have to get done.
Sure.
So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's creating some opportunity to take a break. All of us appreciate an opportunity. You first get home and you just sit down for a second. But you also, I'm assuming that most of the adults out there know that if you go to grab your phone or whatever, you just get sucked in and you're stuck there for the rest of the day or whatever. And so you understand that you do have to start the task and you got to get them done. And so, no, I appreciate that mentality. What have been one of the things I've been enjoying asking other parents is, because I just have a high care for the vision of Lydia and I leading our family and being contributors, not consumers. Like obviously, when you're 6 months old, you just consume everything. That's
sure.
You offer some smiles, I guess,
Yeah.
some cuddles. That's what you get. But
Right.
in terms of like helping out with the responsibilities around the house, it's like that's something I have a high care for and wanting to try to learn how to do. And so I've been appreciating asking other parents, what are the different responsibilities that y'all have worked to give your kids over the years, especially in this age where they're in that 5K first grade all the way up to the 5th grade? What are some of the developments of things that you've learned? They can handle this. They couldn't handle this.
Right. Yeah. That's tough because, like, when you first get them.
Sure.
They're completely dependent on you, and so you kind of get in the habit of just doing everything, and
Sure.
then all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, they can do stuff, but sometimes it just has become habit where you're just used to doing
Sure.
it. So it's trying to find that, okay, what's realistic with the age, and whether it's our youngest, it's, hey, we're gonna go out and do yard work. Like, well, you can come out and pick up toys and make sure the yard's cleared in that way. And whereas with Judah and Kai, it's y'all can push a lawnmower and
Sure.
you can do the more manual labor type stuff now.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's trying to find that with the age, like what's actually realistic, like trying to identify what can they actually do, what's reasonable to ask of them, and also push them a little bit too. But then you're also fighting stuff like laziness, and you're fighting the urge to, well, I can do this more quickly, and
Sure.
It's a Saturday and I want to go in and watch football, and we're out here doing this, and if I step in, we could get this done a little more quickly. It's fighting those types of urges too. So I think that's kind of more just a broader maybe answer to your question, but as far as specifics, yeah, it's really just trying to identify, well, what are they capable of doing?
Sure.
So for us, it's they can do dishes, they can sweep, they can vacuum, they can do yard work with me. They can. At this point, it's especially Kai is to the age where and Vanessa's been really good at helping me be mindful of this, because again, I can just get into work mode and
Sure.
I got to knock these things out, versus I got to go do this random thing. I'm going to switch out a light fixture, we'll let Kai tag along and let him actually help out with it,
Sure, absolutely.
Or even, I like to grill. I like to go stand there and just, get lost in my thoughts while I'm grilling, but have him come out there and help you,
Sure, yeah.
so that he's actually learning how to do that stuff, so it's just bring them alongside, and maybe it's, well, he can't do this yet, Joel, I'm not going to trust Joel with, a grill.
Sure.
But maybe it's good for him to stand there and just start observing that, like, oh, this is things we do, So I think that could be that's a helpful way to think of it. Is just have them come alongside you, and at some point you'll be like, oh, you know what, he can do this. Let me just hand it over to him and start kind of monitoring, and they take those tasks on. I think a way to encourage it would be, like, this is something I heard recently, was it's chores are a good way to remind your child, like, hey, you're needed. Like, this house isn't going to operate and function if you're not here and you're not helping out. And so,
Sure.
Recently Kai's gotten to go on some an FCA retreat with his football team, and when he came back, I was able to be like, man, we missed you. Like, not just your presence, but we literally missed you. Like, we had to take on some
Sure.
chores
Yeah.
that we've gotten used to you doing for us, and it just was a reminder, like, oh yeah, like, Kai's been a blessing because he helps in these ways. And so, I think that even though, of course, you say that and you're met with whatever, think you're child labor, you're met with those kind of remarks, but I hope that deep down there is a sense of, like, I'm needed, and,
Sure.
if I'm not here, like, I would be missed. So
Sure. Gives them a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Which ownership doesn't always feel great if it's not a thing you want to do. Yeah. If you don't want to change the oil in the car, you don't like that you own the car, but you still do have, there's a sense of ownership that's rooted kind of deep in you. So that's cool. What in this phase of life, in every phase of life with a child, you're still dealing with discipline stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it look like? What has it been like for y'all in this transition period? I know each kid is different, and so maybe you could talk about some of the differences between your different sons that you've worked with. But in this specific stage of life, what does it look like for y'all? What are the big things that have stood out as, like, these were our biggest challenges that we had to face, where they just kept rearing against our authority, and maybe some different things that y'all have tried to do to help maintain your position of authority, that's godly, good over your kids, to help them out. So just kind of in that zone of discipline, what does it look like for y'all?
Yeah. It's different with each kid, but we are a family that spanks, and so
Sure.
we with Kai, he's your typical firstborn, where he kind of felt that and learned pretty quickly. And
Sure.
like, okay, and we see that now even older. Like, he's definitely the rule follower, and he's reliable in that sense.
Sure.
it's funny with Judah. I don't remember having to spank as much, but it's also like that season we were just always in the hospital. So it's like, I mean, he's attached to IV poles and stuff like that. So I don't really remember, have a ton of memories of him like just being crazy, rebellious kind of kid.
Yeah, has a whole different layer.
Yeah. So I really don't a ton, like at that young age, I don't have a ton of memory of discipline, but it's not that because he was a saint, it was just a weird season that we were in with that. And, but and then our youngest with Joel, you spank him and he looks at you and is like, is that all you got? Like, he's just that kid. And, and you're just like, all right, Lord, I need help. Cause
that was my youngest brother too. That's what our parents tell us.
So with him, actually something I've started, I'd heard this advice, but, with boys and just, they need to be physically active. And so like I've started, any moment of like, all right, there's going to be a consequence now. There's still the consequences of, hey, I'm taking away screen time or I'm taking away this toy or whatever. But my go-tos have recently been like automatic 20 jumping jacks. And, he's gotten to a point where he hates it. And it's like, oh, and it's like, well, that's what we're doing. And if he keeps putting up a fight, I keep adding more to that. And we did get up to like 50 one day. And and that has actually, I think, just getting him to be active. And it seems like maybe there's just something mentally where it's like, okay, there's a consequence. And, I don't know. But
sure.
Yeah.
Some potential of like, clearly he doesn't like it. So he's still feeling it. Mm-hmm. It's not some long drug out thing that doesn't respond immediately in the moment to the thing that's going on. And then, I guess what you're saying is with young boys especially, we were all over the place as little boys, me and my two brothers, especially the youngest one. But it also whatever the chemical process is that's going on in your body, once you've done 50 jumping jacks, whatever, it's like whatever kind of pent-up anger you might have, you kind of had an opportunity to release it. Whether or not he realizes it or not.
Right.
But you're trying to step in and help provide that for him, provide that release. So that's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah. But, as far as the older ones, screens, it's just such an easy, like, well, we're not going to have screen time right now, as they get older, it's when they're younger, you can take away the toys, you can take all that stuff. But as they get older, you have to find, okay, what's that thing that's important enough to them that like, oh, this is going to catch my attention, that my parents are being serious right now, and whatever I'm doing, isn't okay. And, but with teenagers and preteens, it's the screen times. And, or with the teenager, it's also you're not going to get time with that friend, that they're not going to be able to come over, or you're not going to go to their house. So it's been a lot more of that.
What you talked about screens a couple times. What has been y'all's thought process? It's just a new thing that in the past 20 years or so, parents and families are having to navigate. And so in terms of the scope of the history of parenting, this is brand spanking new stuff, whether or not you've dealt with it your whole life as a parent. But what's been y'all's kind of household rules, values around it? What's some of the reasoning that y'all have thought through in terms of letting your kids use screens or social media or the internet or all that stuff?
Right. Yeah, screens are tough because we all use them, and they're so used to seeing their parents use it. And so then if we're like, well, you can't have screens, it's like, well, I see you look at your phone. Like, so it is hard to find that balance. And the reality is, there's going to be points where you're like, I just need a moment of quiet. And if this iPad can get me that moment of quiet, like, you just get kind of desperate at points. So, we try to limit them. I know we could limit it more, but we've always tried to limit them. It's you try to monitor it, the YouTubes. And I remember when Judah was in the hospital, YouTube Kids was an app that was becoming really popular. And then you're hearing these stories of like, well, there's these like, starts out as a friendly video and then something graphic pops up and you're like, oh my gosh, we got to monitor this. And, so, you do have to be vigilant. You have to be monitoring those things, but, we do allow screens. We try to limit the time, that they're on them, but, it's a part of life. And so it's, how do we go ahead and handle this in an appropriate way and not be mastered by it, and and so right now we have the opportunity to start teaching them, okay, this is appropriate amount of usage, and these are the things you need to be looking out for, and if you see these things, like, come to us. You're not going to be in trouble. Like, let us know that you saw this, or we're going to celebrate it if you come to us. And there have been times where it's like, hey, like this commercial popped up on YouTube, and I knew, like, oh, probably shouldn't see this, so they come and let us know and say, hey, that's I'm proud of you for telling me that.
Absolutely.
So it's going ahead and teaching kind of those, how to cope and respond in those moments. But social media, we're hardcore, like absolutely no social media. I mean, they get on YouTube, which I guess is technically a form of social media, but they go through our accounts. We monitor. We have software and stuff that monitors and screen captures and just does all that kind of stuff too. And so they do get on YouTube, but Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, that kind of stuff, that we've said no. And it's funny because recently Kai's very into football, and he was telling me that somehow social media came up, and specifically Twitter. And I made a comment. I was like, well, like, that's when you're 18, like, you're allowed to, you can do that. But he kind of got upset with me. He's like, I need Twitter so that I got to put my highlights on there so I can get recruited. It was like, bud, like, I promise you, we live in an age where if you are going to be recruited by, like, they're going to know about it. And I was like, and if we start hearing that you're going to be, like, you have a shot at that, like, mommy will set up a Twitter account. She will run it for you, and she will post.
Yeah, there you go.
But
there you go.
Like, you don't need it right now. Like, you just don't need it. I mean, you hear all that stuff, like the Roblox stuff that was going on a few weeks. I mean, that's just it's crazy. It's out there, and and it's like, on one hand, it's like I grew up that age where we played a ton of video games, and so in that one sense, it's like, well, I feel like I turned out okay, and there were many Saturdays where I spent long times in front of the screen.
Sure.
But it is a little different now with just the connected online.
The scope of access.
Yeah. Or even, like, when we were kids, your parents, like my parents were like, hey, I need you to come do this. You could pause the game. Where now it's like, well, I can't pause the game. I'm in the middle of this match, and my friends are playing with me, and they're dependent on me, and it's going to be the end of the world if I stop right now, because our team will lose, and it's like, I heard recently someone was making the point, like, people who make millions of dollars off of this are spending tons of money to, study this thing to figure out how do we keep these people on these things. And I mean, it's true with us and our phones. I mean, how much time we spend on our phones, it makes sense that it'd be true with video games and that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we keep kids on games longer? And so I think we do have to view it. I think we have to be careful not to view it like, well, I did it as a kid, because it's such a different thing now. And at the same time, not being fearful of it. And I'm not going to let my kid have access to that or whatever. Like with phones, we did the whole smartwatch thing, for a while with Kai, because our last house, we lived fairly close to my parents, so, like, he could go walk to my parents, and that let us track him and all that. And then the last couple of years, we've done here's an old iPhone, it's completely locked down, you can't download anything, you can't access the internet, you can text these few friends that we've permitted, And then we did, for his birthday recently, we did finally give him actually convert it to where it has a phone number now, because, with sports and stuff, I mean, it is, like, helpful to be able to try to coordinate those details. Sure. So we're slowly giving that kind of freedom.
Sure, yeah.
But I think it's in moderation, and it's, you do it when you feel like, all right, they've shown that they can handle this. All right, I think, I'll entrust them with a little bit more. And it's funny because the school that they go to now, they just a week or so ago it was like a digital discernment type of seminar where this guy that works for an organization that focuses on how do we deal with screens and this digital world that we live in, and work with, like, our kids in that. And one of the points he made was, when I asked my kid to do something, like, hey, I need you to pause the game and come help me with dishes. He was like, this is a little test that I'll do with my kids. If they immediately pause and come, then in my mind, I go, they're not mastered by it. I'm okay with them continuing to have that time on it. Yeah. Whereas he's like, there'll be times hey, come help me with the dishes. They pause, they come in. I'll be like, hey, way to go. That's awesome. You know what? I'll let you go have some more screen time. I'll finish the dishes for you. He's like, but if I get met with any resistance, like 1 more minute, anything like that, then it's, nope, we're shutting it off now. We're going to be off it for a few days, because, I thought that was just an interesting
I like that
perspective of, are they being mastered by it right now, or do they have control over this? Because it's a tool, and we should be able to use it as that.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
We shouldn't be controlled by it.
Yeah, no. And I like that. I like that language of, is it mastering them?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's directly applicable to the gospel,
Yeah.
to the work of sin. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a lion looking to devour, and it's like, if you can teach that in a very just practical, physical sense of what a kid is dealing with and what they're willing to give up to listen and obey or whatever, versus not. It's like it's just it sounds like that's such a great touch point
Mm-hmm.
into very deep spiritual truths in terms of our relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Maybe to close us out here, what does it look like in this stage of life, at least in that elementary years, of some kind of spiritual rhythms for y'all, whether that be family worship times, whether that be Bible reading, memorization,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be prayer, whether it be mission stuff or church service stuff or whatever. What does that look like for y'all in terms of different rhythms and habits that you've found to be successful and helpful?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one rhythm, and it feels like it's an obvious one to state, but I think it's also like it's important to state, is just prioritizing church, and that we're going to be involved and actively involved in that. And it's again, it feels so obvious, but at the same time, we have so many things that compete with. I want my kid to play soccer, and all of a sudden we're traveling on the weekends to do that, and so we're prioritizing that. And so that would be a big one. Family worship is tough because you have that idea of, oh, this is what I want it to look like, and then it crashes and burns almost all the time. And or you're leading it, and your kids are just looking at you like, what are you talking about? I don't want to be here, and you get really insecure, and what's wrong. So it's hard, but I think finding little victories. So if it's all right, we're having dinner and we're going to read a Bible verse, and just be like, what are y'all's thoughts? Let's just have some conversation around that while we're sitting at the table, versus well, I wanted to read through this whole chapter and I'm going to expound upon it for the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to close our time with a song. It's like it's find something that's actually doable, and at the same time shoot for that too, of like, maybe we can occasionally do that, and we're going to pull the guitar out and we're going to sing some songs too, and worship in that way. Or also, again, like with the chores, it's bring them alongside. So, hey, there's this really difficult thing going on in our life right now. This thing happened at work today, and maybe this would typically just be a conversation Vanessa and I would have just as a grown-ups, but instead invite them in, like, hey, there's this hard thing, like this person was mean to us, or we're scared this deal's going to fall through, and we were counting on that money, or whatever, and so we're going to pray about this, and you kind of invite them in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Model to them, like, this is how we respond, and walk in these moments, So I think that's a really helpful way, is just as you're going, just bring them alongside. But again, you certainly shoot for those other moments of, we're going to spend some time reading the Bible together and talking about it. And of course, there's great resources out there too. That can help with that, more that devotional style. And we've always tried to, especially at that younger age, that elementary age, like at bedtime, we're going to read one of those, the Jesus Storybook by when they're really little, or there's a new one. I'm drawing a blank on it right now. I think it was Kevin DeYoung maybe was a part of it, but it's like the whole Bible. But again, like those are really helpful as far as just kind of providing some structure right before bed. And, and time in prayer, and so bedtime's always a good time to do that as well.
Awesome. I can remember, I think it was distinctly in that stage of life that one of the things that I remember our dad doing with us was would wake up. He's an early morning guy, so he'd make us wake up and be with him. And we'd do some different, so there are different seasons. We'd do like working out or stuff like that. But there'd always be sit down, eat breakfast, and then we would memorize something. A lot of times it was in Proverbs or whatever. You just take a verse. So you have a little index card and you write out the verse. You're all sitting there memorizing it. But I think I remember it so much because, and I'm sure we did other things. That's just been one of the things that stuck out to me the most, and that I can remember looking back on that time. I think it's because I got to, like, it involved me. Like, I didn't have, I mean, I guess I could have chosen to rebel and not do any of it, but it's like I get to be a part of it, and I'm actually participating in it. That's one of the things that we try to think through inside of like Kid City Space or whatever. It's like how can the kids engage with the content, not just hear about it, and I can imagine as like you're talking about how you have that expectation of this is what I can do. It's going to be so beautiful, so wonderful as a parent.
Right.
And then it's
Oh, yeah.
you're met by reality of chaotic kids running around or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's probably true that's going to happen. But anyways, that was just you talking about that was making me think back on that time and reflect on those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think as a father, that's also encouraging to be reminded, like, you have those memories, and so it's and it'd be interesting, like, how was your dad feeling in those moments? You know, where it was, this is chaos, or I'm just getting met with blank stares. And yet to hear, like, later in life, you're like, well, I remember that. And
20 years down the road, that's it. Yeah.
So that's because with the younger, it's the chaos, and with the teenager, it's the slouch in the chair, the arms crossed, and you're just like, oh, okay, like, do you like me? But it's also, like, I hope that they remember this. So, like, Kai and something we've started doing is once a month, just Saturday morning, I'm taking them to breakfast and just talk and how are you doing? And my hope is, like, we have a book and I want to try to work through it, but I've already been met with, your school started and I have so much else I have to read, and so whatever, like, maybe we don't do that. Maybe it's just just conversations. But
you try picking. Yeah, I bet if the book has, like, any kind of, like, podcast or video series, that might be the way in. You still engage the content, but it feels a lot easier to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that's something we've been doing, and I'm probably gonna start doing it with Judah as well.
Yeah.
But it's that same thing. Like, I hope that just that memory of, like, okay, my dad took time to spend time with me.
Absolutely.
Even though right now it sometimes feels like, are you happy that we're going to run together? But I hear that at some point they grow out of that. But yeah. So I mean, just to practical, like, something else we do now because they go to school and we're time in the car. Like, I've tried to find podcasts that we listen to, or even Piper's Solid Joys, or stuff like that, where it's like a short 5-minute devotional that put it on, and then let's try to at least have a conversation about it. And 9 times out of 10, they're not interested. They don't really seem like they want to talk about it, and that's okay. Like, I trust God's word's God will do with His word what He wants to do.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
Sometimes it does spark a question or a conversation. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, do you have any last thing? Is there something we haven't covered yet, something we haven't talked about, something you want to say is like, this is the secret sauce? They got it all.
Yeah, I've got it all. And then you just cut the video right there. Yeah. I know the answers. No. I would say that this is kind of with a thought that I have, like, with the schooling, but it really applies more just in general to just life in general, but also as a family. Like, there's a lot of decisions you have to make, and like with schooling, and it's take it case by case, year by year, child by child. Like, what worked good this year may not be the best option next year.
Yeah.
What worked great for this kid may not be the best option for this other kid, because things change, right? I mean, we're all different people, we're wired a different way, but things change too. Where, I mean, you think back over the year and what has happened in our lives. It's like, well, I was literally living here, and now I'm living in a different geographical location, or something's changed with my job, or you have a child, and like, positives and wonderful things like that, and bad things happen too, where you're walking through trials, or you've lost someone, or it's so things like that happen, and that's going to change us to where whatever it is, like, let's, in the context of school, for example, that may have worked good this year, but things change. This might be different next year. So don't be afraid to take that time to reassess and be examining, like, is this working for us, and is this good? And if it's not, like, I don't think really no one likes change, but there are certain people like myself where it's like, once I get in that routine, I don't want to change at all. Like, I would rather just suffer through. At least I know what to expect. Yeah. But it's don't be afraid of re-examining things and doing that with that posture of humility and submission to the Lord. Like, hey, is this good? Like, do you want us to keep doing it this way? And then, since this is a father podcast, and I just, I think something the Lord's really been teaching me the last couple of years has been we're to lead our family, we're to lead our wives and our kids. But one way that leadership plays out is, like, actually, like, Adam was put into the garden to cultivate it and to bring life and to nourish and nurture that. Yeah. And that's the same within our families, where we should be cultivating our families our marriages in such a way that life's being produced, and that, am I pouring into Vanessa in such a way, or am I pouring into my kids in such a way that like they're actually starting to flourish and be who it is that God's designing them to be, and of course we fail at it, and there's grace that abounds, and we're fully dependent on the Lord, but like we should be constantly reassessing on our own, like, am I doing that in their life? And so like with the school, like it kind of took our marriage being shaken to kind of for me to go, wait a minute, I haven't been doing that with my wife. Like, because the signs were already showing, like, for a couple of years that the homeschooling was becoming difficult. But like I said, I liked the routine, and there were things about it I liked, so I kept going. But it really took me going, is this producing like life in my family, but specifically in my wife? And going, all right, maybe it's not. And so, Lord, are we supposed to try this out? And he directs us over there, and all of a sudden I see, oh, this was good. Like, he's blessing it, and life is coming from that. And so, yeah, just an encouragement to the men out there, to you as a father. Like, how am I pouring into my wife right now to be such a learner of your wife, be such a learner of your kids, that you're like, I see these things, I see these skills, I see these these positives that God has wired them in these ways, and how can I come alongside that and really nurture that to see them grow and thrive?
Yeah.
And I see these weaknesses, I see these things where I can come alongside and either help or sharpen, or
absolutely.
So
no, I think that's such a great lens to see it through, in terms of that. How can we cultivate life? That's been something that language is helpful for me in terms of the stage I'm in, when we just got a brand new baby, 6 months old, whatever. But I've tasted some of what you're articulating, which is how can you cultivate life? So I've tasted we didn't produce the life. God was the one that worked to produce life, and it's a joyful, genuinely more joy than I expected to experience with this time. And it's made me long for more, and that's what I really appreciate you closing out with that. So thanks so much for coming in and having a conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me today in this conversation about parenting. Hope it was helpful to you, and that it sparks good conversation for your own family. I know that each family is unique, and you're going to have your own questions about whatever you're facing with your kids. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to other families in our church or your pastors about any help that you might need as a parent.